Hey everybody, welcome to Battleground Podcast. Today we have an incredible guest. His name is Mark Caskey. Mark is the CEO of Steel Nation. He started that company with $6,000 in his pocket and a spare bedroom, and over the last 15 years, he's grown it to almost $350 million in sales. He's a leader on all fronts. I mean, we talked about what it was like starting a company, the fear that maybe ran through his heart when he was investing that money in the first phases of Steel Nation. Obviously, we talked about the importance of energy and American energy independence, energy dominance. I know I talk about this issue a lot, but it's so important. I think it's the most important issue that we face today because it's woven into every fabric of life. You like the lights on in the restaurant that you're at, you like cheap energy bills, you like filling up your car and not spending a lot of money. It's all tied into the energy industry. You like having a strong America. You like our enemies being weak. You like America having the biggest, baddest military on the block. It's all tied in to our energy industry. And Mark, what I like about Mark is that we live at a time where the biggest titans in the industry, Shell, Chevron, BP, they have all the money in the world to take the fight to the radical left on these issues, who would, by the way, completely dismantle our energy industry and lower the quality of life here in America for basically everybody. But all of the companies that have the ability to take the fight to them and shape a national narrative that is positive about energy, they don't fight back. It's like they appease every step of the way. They feed the crocodile expecting to survive, but the reality is they're just going to be eaten last. And so Mark is a warrior. He takes the fight to these people every single day. Not emotionally, but fact-based arguments. And so he's a leader, he's an entrepreneur, he's a warrior. His company, Steel Nation, is incredible. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Mark. And as always, if you like this show, you like what you see, you like what you hear, please subscribe, whether it's on Rumble, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review as well. I mean, all of these things help us grow, and it helps us with the algorithm on YouTube, Rumble, and Apple Podcasts and places like that. So as always, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy my interview with Mark. Take care. Mark Caskey, CEO of Steel Nation. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you are a pretty remarkable guy. As anybody that follows me knows, I am a warrior for the oil and gas industry, and not just because I think it's important to be energy independent, but because I think it ties in to every facet of what it means to be an American. It lifts up the middle class. It's good for our economy. It's good for national security. It creates jobs, especially in a place like Pennsylvania. But one of the things that frustrates me, and we talked a little bit about this before going live, is that you have all of these companies that have all the resources in the world that just use the left's talking points and these climate activist talking points, and they don't actually move the ball down the field. But you're not like that. You're a fighter, and in this space desperately needs fighters, Mark.
That's a hell of a compliment. I appreciate it, Sean. I'm self-employed. I started Steel Nation. We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. I come from a coal background. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I just had an interview the other day with Mary Beth Cerrucci, and I kind of told her the same story. In 1980, the steel mills collapsed. I come from a long lineage of steel workers, first to go to college. I was out there. There was nothing for me to do in the steel industry. Most of my family moved away. I'm the only one of 6 kids left here in Pittsburgh for that reason. They all most of them went south for better jobs and better pay. I got into the energy business 25, 30 years ago, building coal prep plants all through Appalachia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Ohio, Montana, Wyoming. When President Obama was elected in '08, he ran on the fact that we're going to shut down coal and we're going to clean up America and clean up the air and things like that. And I saw the writing on the wall. I started Steel Nation in 2008. It was the middle of a horrible recession. In June 8th of '08, I had $6,000, a spare bedroom. That was about it. And I started this thing, and I knew I had to find a new way to do it. And I learned the first fracked well is 8 miles from my house here in Kansas, right around Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. I knew there had to be something out there for me to do, and I did. But I've had two strikes against us, steel being imploded, and it was a man-made problem. We gave it all away to China. We gave it away to Russia, India, these second and third world countries because they don't have the pollution laws that we do. Certainly steel could have done a lot better, and we do. We still manufacture in America, and it's a lot cleaner than it was back in 1980. But I saw steel decimated. I saw Pittsburgh decimated. What was once the most livable place to live after winning 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. It's a great town, and it was that whooshing sound, that swooshing sound that Bill Clinton used to talk about. The NAFTA. All the jobs going down south, going far south into South America. But Pittsburgh was decimated in the early 80s. It was a sad place to be. I ended up moving away as well. Spent some time in California, San Francisco of all places, and but I came back to Pittsburgh. My parents were here. They were getting old, needed some help. So the second strike, seeing 2 strikes against coal, and it just decimated. We hear Joe Manchin on the news quite a bit, fighting for the MVP line. We'll talk a little bit about that, hopefully. West Virginia is always the 50th poorest state, the worst education, the worst schools and things like that. But coal kept them going, and at least they tried. So in 2008, when we saw fracking coming around or horizontal directional drilling, West Virginians, Pennsylvanians, Ohioans are the 3 main. We benefited immensely to the tune of $70 to $80 billion that it's brought into our economy in the last 15 years, 16 years. The one state that didn't take advantage of it was the state of New York. The liberal governors that they've always had up there want nothing to do with drilling. And it's interesting. The Marcellus Shale gets its name from the town of Marcellus, New York. Marcellus, New York is right just north of Binghamton, New York, about 20, 30 miles north, where the actual shale, if we look at where we're at in Canonsburg, we drill down probably 8,000, 10,000 feet, depending on the formations and the elevations, things like that. When you get up to New York, the actual shale comes out of the ground. You can touch it. It's a cliff. It's under all the streams. A lot of the streams up in the town of Marcellus, because the shale is so shallow, bubble methane. Okay, and they use the left will use the bubbling of methane as a man-made thing. It's a natural occurrence, right? So I got 2 strikes against me. I'm not going to let the left shut down the Marcellus Shale and all of American energy. We are producing more natural gas than any other country. We are cleaning up our air more than any other country. We're producing just as much petroleum as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and all of our Middle Eastern friends, right? Friends,
yes,
friends.
Right.
And we're just going to shut this down for some. We're seeing all the things that are happening here. We shut down Homer City, which is a coal electrical plant, in the last month. 800 jobs just poof, vanished. Homer City is going to be a third world country in the matter of months or years. And we're going to do that over and over and over again throughout America? No. For some pie in the Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean.
No, look, I mean, what you're saying hits really close to home for me. I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised, 4th generation, Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in the 80s. I saw how decimated it was, and my family felt that personally, Mark. My grandfather worked in the mills. All his brothers worked in the mills, and when they were shut down all along the waterfront there in Homestead, it just decimated the area, And also, I've got a lot of family that has strong ties to Weirton, West Virginia. That's another town where I grew up. it was bustling, but it was in transition. Within 5 or 6 years, it was a ghost town. Everything was shut down. Real estate prices, real estate prices in Weirton crashed. Like you can buy a home in freaking Weirton, West Virginia for probably $30,000 even today. I mean, it's just like real estate prices have completely bottomed out, and those local economies have never really recovered. And so this is something that's deeply personal to me. And you know, I saw Pittsburgh become revitalized when we tapped into Marcellus shale and fracking and natural gas and all the abundant natural resources that we have here. But if you look at what, like, many of these politicians for one generation after the next, and by the way, Republican and Democrat, have overlooked these issues in so many different ways, Mark. All you have to do is take a drive, because I've got a farm up in Farmville. You probably never even heard of it, but I know where Homer City is. I live just outside Zelienople. Take a drive through some of these small towns and see how these policies of both Republicans and Democrats of shipping, you know, you say sending, you know, like outsourcing steel to China. Well, that affects people in these towns and neighborhoods. People that, like you said, you were a generational steel worker, right? And so like when people don't understand that these types of jobs are legacy based, like your father, your grandfather did them, so now you do them. Right. And you take that away from people. And then you have the left say something so callous, like, well, we'll just teach them how to use computers, or they can learn to code. I just think, like, screw you, man. Like, there has to be a line in the sand where, you know, people like us. By the way, Mark, this freaking nation right now is awash with consultants, and I find myself wondering, like, does anybody swing a freaking hammer anymore? You know, or do we just outsource all of that work? And it's just frustrating to me, because I've seen what these policies do. And I think that's why, you know, so many people like President Trump. They might not always like his comportment, or maybe they don't agree with everything he says, but at least people have a sense that he cares about the workers.
Right. It's funny. They don't want us to make anything in America anymore. It's not just the war on American energy independence. It's the war on capitalism. And it's not just here in America. It's all over. Let's face it, most of South America has gone socialist. Most of Europe is socialist now. Most of Asia is socialist. Our neighbors to the north are pretty much socialist and have been for quite some time. You know, a real world example is Nucor Steel, which is number 2. Cliffs is number 1, Indian owned, by the way, up all through Toledo, Cleveland, you know, the Great Lakes area. But Nucor out of Charlotte, North Carolina, put themselves on the map 40 years ago, and they use a lot of recycled steel. We end up buying a lot of Nucor steel as well. Nucor looked at Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. They wanted to be right where you were talking about, with all the barges in Homestead, Senator Fetterman's old area. What better place to put a steel mill?
Totally.
You know, in Braddock, Pennsylvania, or across the river. All these brownfields that were used for coal or used for steel making that have barge facilities.
Absolutely.
You know, we have all this infrastructure in Pittsburgh that we could still use, okay? And I'll get back to that infrastructure in a little bit here. But we didn't have a chance, okay? We have Reggie threatening our doorstep, which is the regional greenhouse gas emission, okay? That's in every state around us, including Virginia, Maryland, all the left-leaning states, all the way up to New England, New Hampshire, New York, all the way down. Reggie, it's in the courts right now in Pennsylvania. It'll probably come out of the courts by the fall. I'm thinking. Shapiro, we're not sure if Governor Shapiro is going to support it or not. But it's interesting that Governor Shapiro included $600 million from Reggie. Okay, if we adopt Reggie with all these left states, Pennsylvania produces more energy than all those other 11 states combined. Okay, are they producing energy in New Jersey, in New Hampshire, in Maryland, and Massachusetts? No, we are. We're the breadwinners. We're producing all of their energy. So who's going to pay the carbon tax on that? Pennsylvanians are, right? Plain and simple. And how Governor Shapiro can put $600 million in his budget on the first year of joining Reggie is beyond me. It's just politics. It's just politics is normal.
So explain to people, I know what the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is, but explain to people what specifically it is and why it's bad for our economy, bad for our state, and bad for the people of our Commonwealth.
Okay. So I don't know if you know this or not, but I spent 6 years. I was appointed to the Pennsylvania DEP, Citizens Advisory Council, and eventually made it to the Environmental Quality Board for 6 years. I was appointed by Judge Brandon Newman. I think you knew Brandon when he was a representative.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon came, Brandon's a Democrat right here out of Canonsburg. He's a great wrestler, by the way, back in the day, and still work out with the guy. And I don't want to be in a dark alley with Brandon, but he wouldn't be in a dark alley. He's built like a brick, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to keep my language clean here, Sean. I apologize.
Hey, it's all good. Hey, this is it. You can go where you need to go. This is fine with me.
8-9 years ago, he barges into my office, doesn't even stop at the receptionist, and starts pointing at me, raising. I said, "Come on back, Brandon, representative at that time." And he said, "I need you on the Citizens Advisory Council of the DEP." I had no clue what it was to begin with. He goes, "We need some oil and gas guys. We need coal guys on there. We need nuclear guys on there. We need solar guys. We need wind power. We need everybody on there. And you're my man." And Senator Sam Smith, I think he was a senator. No, maybe he was a representative. He formally appointed me to the board. So back in the day, 8 years ago, because it was 2 years ago when they had a coup and got rid of me and some other pro-energy people. I'll get into that a little bit too. It was 18 members, and it was a good mix. 10 and 8, 10 pro-energy, 8 that were more Sierra Club, conservationists, those types of things. It was a good mix, and we got things done, and we debate back when debate was debatable, so to speak. We can't. Mm-hmm. We don't even debate in this country anymore. We just throw bombs across the aisle, right?
Exactly.
We got a lot done, and then when Governor Wolf got serious about joining Reggie about 5 years ago, we looked at it. We looked at the plans for it, and we knew right away it was the worst thing that could happen to Pennsylvania. So the 9 or 10 folks that were pro-energy on our side, we fought it, and we fought it hard. And we had facts and figures. The plan was done by the governor's DEP that had all these facts and figures that were just complete lies. Pennsylvania, during that time, since we started fracking 15 years ago, has cleaned up 100% better than any of those 11 states in Reggie. Without paying carbon tax, it's amazing how we have cleaned up. And we've cleaned up their air, but because they're using natural gas. New Jersey's using natural gas rather than coal, right? So for us to join Reggie, we've already lowered our emissions, every way you can measure emissions and methane and NOx, NOx, and everything else. We've done what they were trying to do. All their facts and figures said we can lower this by doing carbon. We did it without the carbon tax and without joining Reggie and those things. And that was our biggest argument. And we tried to get that out to the general public. Nobody knows what Reggie is, but only 14% of Americans have any idea what Reggie is. And most of those 14% are people that are involved with industry and are looking at their checkbooks and the number, what it's going to cost them a year in carbon tax, in addition to what we already get taxed on, right? Yeah. And you look at those money. They either have to raise prices or fire people, unemploy people, or go out of business. And that's what we're going to, that big swooping sound from Reggie are companies that are going to go to West Virginia, are going to go to Ohio.
That's exactly right. I mean, you right now, like there was just a story on Fox News the other day about 66% of America is at risk for rolling blackouts, like California. I mean, that is completely unacceptable, and it's also dangerous. I mean, you look what happened in Texas when their grid was overwhelmed and people, like 700 people, froze to death down there because of an over-reliance on an over reliance on solar and wind and whatever other bullshit that they're using down there. These things are dangerous. And I think another statistic was that like 66% of Americans are at risk of having a real tough time month to month. Like we're having a real tough time of making ends meet because of rising energy prices. And Reggie is gonna skyrocket prices here in this state because companies are going to pass this off. The companies that stay in Pennsylvania are going to pass off the cost to the consumer, and their energy costs are going to rise. Other companies that have the means are going to move across the border to West Virginia or Ohio or another state where they don't have to try to grow a company with burdensome regulations that crush them at the same time. And what's something that you were talking about, Mark, about all of the things that market-based innovation has done in the oil and gas industry, specifically with fracking and our ability to decrease our carbon emissions to really a standard that is better than what was set forth in the ridiculous Paris Climate Accords. We beat that standard in Pennsylvania through guys like you who are innovating every day and trying to get better. And even though you're meeting all of these ridiculous bars that the radical left and these leftist governors and politicians are putting out there, it's not good enough. And that's how I know that it's not about conservation. It's not about the environment. It's not about climate change. It's about crushing the energy industry, because to crush the energy industry is to crush people's freedom. If this whole push to ban natural gas stoves. Well, I mean, it'd be great if the government could push a button and turn off your electric so that you couldn't cook. This whole push for electric cars. Not only does it empower our enemies in China, because a lot of the rare minerals or rare earth minerals that we need for the batteries are owned by China, or China has market share on a lot of those things. It'd be great if the government could flip a switch and turn off your electric car. Oh, you said that you would be public enemy number one, Mark. Like Mark, here's Mark Caskey again saying some crazy shit on LinkedIn. Turn off his electric car, cut off his ability to cook for the next week. That's what this is about. This whole green movement is just communism painted green. It's complete bullshit.
Amen. I never finished my story about Nucor Steel. Nucor ended up in Charleston, West Virginia. They have the barges, they have the rivers down there, and it was because of our taxes in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is not open for business. We are against business. So let's talk. You hit the nail on the head. It's not the war on energy independence. It's the war on capitalism. Let's think about Marx for a second. The Marxists in the late 1800s, let's create friction between the races, between the sexes, between the haves, the have-not. All this tranny stuff is just planned, okay? This is nothing but planned. So we look like the anti-tranny people when we do pushback against. And this has been planned for Pride Month every year, right? And now it's just it's bubbling up, and we've had enough of it. And most of America has had enough of it. Okay, so let's create problems with races. Let's look at the George Floyd, what happened before, right as COVID was starting. I grew up in the Deep South before I moved to Pittsburgh. I saw racism, and it wasn't pretty, and I still see it today when I go back. I see it everywhere I am. There's still a lot of racism here. But they're trying to bring racism back. Do you see that happening? Sexism. Yes. We grew up in the 70s, where the Gloria Steinem brought women to the front and future, as it should be, where we're equal and the pay is coming up and all these things. It's gotten so much better. But with the left, let's create all these problems and let's implode America. Not from outside, not from Putin doing anything, not from China doing anything. Let's implode it internally, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And I don't want to be the COVID guy, but man, we fell in lock, stock, and barrel on this COVID shutdown.
You're 100% right.
Did we push back? We pushed back. Did most Americans push back? No. Give me the jab. I want more jabs. That's going to save me. And then so COVID even acted as a separation of the vaxxers and the non-vaxxers. So we the left continues to create these problems, the sexes, the haves, the have-nots. it's breaking down America as we know it.
Yeah,
and they're using energy as an excuse.
I mean, you're completely right. I mean, I always say that, when you see these companies, and we're awash with them today, Mark, these companies that say diversity is our strength, it's like, it frustrates me because a guy, having been in the military myself and served with people of every color, race, creed, religion, like, none of that shit mattered to us. Like, we were all Americans at our core fighting for one mission. We all loved each other, and it didn't matter. So when people say and companies say diversity is our strength, it's not necessarily true because it's only part of the story. What our greatest strength in this country is and always has been is our ability to unify beyond those differences. And as you said, I grew up in, like I said, in the 80s, where we were taught in social studies class that America is great because we're a melting pot. We take what's amazing about all of these other cultures and we bring them here, and we don't discard the differences, but those people become Americans. And that has shifted. And this is part of my issue with Republicans who are just, all I care about is low taxes and small government. And by the way, that stuff is very, very important. But Republicans, or the right, has seeded all of these little cultural fights that at the time were little, but have grown into huge fires today. We seeded Hollywood. We seeded the entertainment industry. We seeded our schools. We seeded the media. All of these small cultural fights, for the past 20 years, we gave them to the left and didn't engage on that front because all we cared about was small government and low taxes, which again is important, but we're seeing this play out in real time now where the left tries to divide us among all of our many differences, because if we're fighting amongst each other, we're not paying attention to the horribly irresponsible policies that they're implementing, like you said, which is Reggie, which will absolutely crush this state and crush the people, by the way, on both sides of the aisle. In fact, it will disproportionately affect lower income people because, if energy prices go up, it's not the top 1% that are going to have problem putting food on the table for their families or filling up their car or heating their home. It's going to be the people that make the least, and they're the ones that are going to be affected. So that's why I always think that there's a moral component to this argument as well. Mark, I got to ask you, tell me about how a guy like you, who's a generational steel worker, goes from that to becoming an entrepreneur with the first college educated in your family, I think you said.
Yes. Becoming
an entrepreneur and building coal-fired plants. How do you go from, steel worker to entrepreneur?
You get fired from every job I ever had. I try to
That's an amazing answer. That's a great answer.
It's God's honest truth. I've been fired for, my first job in high school was Brookside Lumber in Bethel Park, and the customer's always right until you get that one customer that I had to prove he was wrong, and I was fired that day after 5 years of working there. Now I try to keep my ego intact, but I have a lot of good ideas, and I try to look at the world from I try to look at it from the left, from the right, and I try to look at business the same way, Sean. And, a lot of my early jobs were in construction. A lot of them were family owned or tightly held. My big question would always, why are we doing it this way? And the answer was, well, we've been doing this way since 1952 or 1940, however long this company's been in business. Well, you're doing it wrong. Well, I was usually shown the door that afternoon. Man, growing up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, my dad left Pittsburgh. Mom and dad left Pittsburgh to go work for Eastern Airlines, and my dad loved the New South. He was a high school graduate. He could read pretty good. He was a Central Catholic guy. At the time was probably at least a 2-year, second year of college. Back when Central was really, putting out some really smart people back in the 40s and 50s, and anyway, grew up in the South. We had a neighbor, his name's Richard Budd, and we were really tight with them. my brother and one of their kids, John Bud, were born at the same time, so our mothers got to share maternity wards, so they became good friends and ended up living, right up the street from one another. Richard Budd left his house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he went and cleaned office buildings. He hadn't done before 7 in the morning, And I can remember him doing this, and then he worked all night and started hiring people. I watched him build a business, and I helped him. We went, and he would pay us under the table $1 an hour, whatever it was back in the day. Remember doing yard work over at his house, and we had to pick green onions. He would pay us 0.03 cents for every green onion that we yanked out of the ground. At the end of the day, you'd make $11, and
that's a lot of green onions, man. That's a lot of green.
Yeah, tell me about it. But he was my idol. He was my entrepreneurial idol. Right next to Roberto Clemente and Dwayne Allman on the music side. And I watched Richard Budd. And today, Budd Services, they cover all the Southeast, up into Maryland, all the way to Florida and Alabama and Mississippi. And they're over $1 billion. And their concentration is janitorial service for office buildings. Okay?
Wow.
The son is named Ted Budd. Ted Budd is now the new senator of North Carolina that was just elected past November.
Get out of here. I did not
Yes.
make the connection. That is
Yes.
crazy. I did not know that.
Our neighbors growing up, they think like I do. They're very conservative on the way they think, and they're very conservative with the pocketbook, with the politics and everything else. And Ted Budd is going to be a lifetime great senator. He is a
great guy. He is a great guy.
He is.
I did not know that. What a crazy, crazy small world. What a crazy connection.
Yep.
So this guy was so his dad. It was his dad that was your entrepreneurial idol.
Richard Budd. We called him Uncle Rich. Yeah.
That's
He's
crazy.
Still alive and still goes to the office. Joe, who's my age, runs the company and does a great job. And they're just great entrepreneurs. So growing up, I always wanted to own a business. What am I going to do? And finally, after being fired so many times, I had to, and I had a marketing. My wife and I had a marketing agency where we mostly dealt with developers such as like Rod Pyatt, Jack Pyatt were clients, Heartland Homes, Ryan Homes, Ed Ryan was a developer, and we helped them develop South Point back, and they really put us on the map. That was before I got into construction, and way before I got into oil and gas. But that was kind of my first entree into entrepreneurship. What kind of killed it? Didn't kill it. We could have kept going, but everybody was getting their own computer. Everybody was an artist, and these we have more megabytes on these things than just a camera. And I'm tired of fighting technology. But I right as soon as my local watering hole is Frankie Eyes up here on Route 19. And I got to meet all these guys from Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma, driving these white trucks and, wearing these FR clothing and things like that. And, I got to meet these guys. And these are real people. They're just like our steel workers here in Western Pennsylvania, just like our coal miners here in West Virginia, Ohio. Real guys. And they took me under the wing, and they knew that coal was going down. They said, why don't you learn how to do compressor buildings? And I went to the original Wren's Well. There's 8 miles across the hill over here. And they showed me the ropes and said, you really need to learn compression. And I did. I stayed up for 36 hours and many pots of coffee and Mountain Dew, and I learned what compressor stations were all about. They're loud. They're obnoxious. They're usually in the middle of nowhere, but as if we look right here in Canonsburg, we use I-79. On the east side of I-79 tends to be dry gas. On the west side tends to be wet gas. So we're getting into the suburbs, of Hickory, Pennsylvania, and Cecil Township and things like that. And it just amazed me when I first visited the first compressor station. It was so loud. I had earplugs on, but even with earplugs, it was like being in a jet, right next to a jet engine. And I had that eureka moment. That above me, I can build these things cleaner, cooler, quieter, and safer, and at less cost. And I did. I started the company 2 weeks after that. $6,000 to my name. By 10 o'clock that morning, the $6,000 was gone. I used it as deposits on buildings.
So, Mark, what was going through your mind? I mean, so put us in your shoes there, because so many of the people that tune into us are entrepreneurs, leaders themselves in different industries, and also workers. I mean, we've got a national audience, but take us to that moment where you are looking at that $6,000 in your bank account and thinking, like, what are you thinking? Like, if you because it is so difficult living paycheck to paycheck and not knowing what the next month looks like. And you're taking that $6,000 and you're investing it into an idea that I got to believe at the time, Mark, there's no guarantees in life, especially in business. Yep. So what were you thinking?
So two things. Number one, I knew that this oil and gas was going to, the Marcellus miracle is what I call it, Sean. I knew it was going to take off. We had the infrastructure here to do it. Whether it was God or Mother Nature put this under our feet millions of years ago. The beauty of the Marcellus Shale is so much shallower to drill into. We don't have to go down 20,000 feet. We can go 6,000. As we get more closer to Marcellus, New York, the shale comes out of the ground. So there's wells up in Tioga County, Susquehanna, that are less than 1,000 feet. It's hard to do the horizontal drilling at less than 1,000 feet, but it's a lot cheaper than going down 20,000 feet or even 10. So I knew that there was only two competitors. They were both out of Houston, and they'd been in business since the 1950s. And I still compete against them today, but I knew that we could be with my plant. I was affiliated with a plant here in Ambridge unfortunately it burned down about 5 years ago, out of business. A couple hundred people lost their jobs. I knew that the plant, that I was in steel buildings already for quite a few years before that. I knew our plant could service them. I knew that I could sell it. I knew that we could do it cheaper, safer, quieter, cooler, and all the other. There was another thing that I had in my back pocket is when the company I worked for before, I had worked for about a year on Warner Robins Air Force Base down in Warner Robins, Georgia. Okay, this is a huge plant, 400,000 feet. The planes came in. You'll know some of this. The planes, every so many cycles have to be rebuilt. So you have to tear down the whole plane, take all the skin off it. So they were redoing all the jet engine, everything that went into the fighter jets, the bigger the cargo planes, stuff like that. I had a real good idea I was about to land that, and that was a $2.6 million company or project. I'm sorry. I knew that was going to come in, so that made that $6,000 not as risky, but it was still a premonition. It could have gone wrong, but within 3 months, in September of that year, we did get this $2.6 million contract to build that. So that I had that in my back pocket. So to speak.
Were you already ready to go, Mark? You already had the employees, the equipment, things that you needed to make that happen?
No.
So how did you scale up so quickly to get it done?
That spare bedroom was the best friend I had, Sean. I could start working at 5 and work until 10 at night, and going to meet customers. But I knew enough people in the business that I had worked with in my previous job to join. I had enough steel erectors. I had enough concrete people. I knew a lot of electrical companies here that were dying to get in this business as well. Somebody told me, and it might have been Richard Budd from Budd Services, don't go into business with other people. And I didn't for many years. Now I have a partner in the last 3 years. His name's Mark Dooley, because he's such a good president. He's the president of Steel Nation now. I'm the CEO and founder, because he gets to do all the work with the banks and the human resources and things like that I'm not very good at. I'm good at selling, and I designed 2,500 buildings, and I can sell ice to Eskimos, but not really good at debits and credits and human resources and ESG. Not to say that we're not ESG, but it's just not my bailiwick.
Hey, every why guy needs a how guy,
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like he's your how guy.
Yeah, Dooley does a great job as his nickname. But I just knew, yeah, as an entrepreneur, you know when things are going to go. If you look back to '08, the rest of the country was, the Shearson Lehmans and the other banks were just imploding upon itself. Wall Street was imploding. People were losing their houses. They had these ridiculous mortgages. All the things that were happening in the recession of '07, '08. It was scary times, and I had to do it because I had no job to go to. I had to create this thing. As an entrepreneur, you have to believe in yourself. It's similar to military. You have to believe in your platoon. My eventual team that I did build. All the subcontractors that I had lined all the subcontractors up before I even incorporated. They were on board, and all Pittsburgh companies, just like we are, centered here. Now they travel with us. They're out and just finished up a job in Utah. Have a bunch of them up in northern Pennsylvania right now, a bunch in Ohio, a bunch in West Virginia. Ohio, big time. We're doing all kind of work over towards Cincinnati. It's for oil and gas, but it's distribution. It's not the compressor stations that we're used to. The teammates that we teamed up with 15 years ago, we still work together and see each other all the time.
So you built this company, Steel Nation, $6,000 to your name and a spare bedroom, to over $300 million in sales and 2,500 oil and gas projects completed. I mean, that's in 15 years to today, right? Today's your 15-year anniversary.
Yeah, pushing 350 on 350 million, which is incredible when I do the math.
Looking back, what do you think about that? Those last 15 years, you ever think that? It sounded like you had an idea that the direction that the oil and gas industry was going with Marcellus Shale, but do you ever think that it would be 350 million, pushing 350 million in sales? Do you ever think that would be your future?
I thought it'd be higher than that by now. I really thought that we would go overseas. We're not ready to do that yet. The overseas markets in oil and gas are very tricky. We're going to keep it domestic for a while. There's no reason we can't get down to South America. Going to the OPEC countries are just culturally very hard to do. But yeah, I knew we'd be this big, but I want to be bigger. We were doubling and triple every year until COVID hit. 2019 was 18 and 19, we were just gangbusters. 2020, you started hearing about people getting sick in the fall, and there was nothing on the media about it. But the smart ones knew, the people that really paid attention knew there was something going on at the end of that year. And by January, we definitely knew. I had COVID. I'm very proud that I've never been jabbed. But I fought it off. I fought it off with ivermectin. I know this is off subject.
No, it's okay. We can talk about this because this is something that I'm really passionate about. COVID really pissed me off. I mean,
yep.
Like we actually had, you said people listen to the government here, and it's so true. But the way that we responded to COVID has shaken my faith in government in the way I'd never thought possible. We're talking about our government locked people's private businesses down, locked people in their homes, forced them to mask up, knowing. And I know that there was a lot of unknown, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, and I get that. But like there were studies out there that cloth masking was not effective. There were studies out there that said lockdowns would not work, yet they still locked us in our homes. And they closed people's private businesses. I mean, like this is how I was running for Congress during all of this. It was not. It was like real difficult to, run a campaign when everything is shut down. But nonetheless, I was still getting calls every day from businesses saying, like, this is how I make my living. I can't, like, you think about like a hairdresser or something with a small hair salon. I mean, these people were crushed. That was that was the only way that they could make a living, and our government callously shut them down. Like, it's insane. And not only that, like, people were accepting their loved ones dying alone. I mean, you weren't allowed to even go say goodbye to your loved one because of COVID. I mean,
Yep.
I'm sorry. It just, and that now we find out, like, all of this stuff continues to come out. I mean, I was one of the first people in January of 2020 to say, wait a second, there is a COVID research virology, like weaponized COVID research lab in Wuhan, and we're saying this thing came from a wet market? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, I'm not saying that the Chinese like weaponized it on purpose, but maybe there was a leak. I mean, maybe it got out in another way. Are we too smart to use common sense? And I was called a crazy conspiracy theorist. And look, now you have all these vaccine experts like this Dr. Holtz guy who was refusing to debate Robert Kennedy Jr. on Joe Rogan. Now we find out that he had connections along with the NIH to the Wuhan Virology Clinic, along with Anthony Fauci. These were the people that were pushing the policies on us all in the first place. Oh my God, this is something that I could go on about all day. These people are corrupt liars that hurt this country, and we should never, ever, ever give them amnesty. It makes me so upset. And to hear that you're affected by COVID as well, here you are growing like gangbusters, and 18, 19, and 20 happens, and just like everybody else, COVID.
Well, you're not going to say it, so I'm going to say it. It wasn't just China; it was the United States. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's be clear on that. This is going to take 20 or 30 years to come out. It's coming out right now, right? It's Moderna. It's all the big.
That's exactly right.
It's Russia was involved. France was involved. Germany was involved. This is a worldwide thing to shut us down, and it's the movement towards the left. What better ways can we check on these people? We're going to shut them down, and let's see if they obey. And we did. And that's what's scary about the people that obeyed. On that subject, it's scary to me the doctors knew. Okay.
Oh, same.
The doctors knew that these jabs were ineffective. They knew that ivermectin, that the dose that I took, I had five horses then. We went down, you have a tube, it looks like a caulking gun, okay? A tube about a foot long, and it's for a 2,000-pound horse, and it has all these lines in it, and you cut it like a stick of butter, right? I said, well, I'm 215 pounds, and I'm going to just take this much of ivermectin, and my wife's going to take this much, and my kids are going to take this, and grandma's going to take it too. And we all did. And it was the worst 18 hours of my life. But we were great. 2 days later, then went and got tested again. It was gone, And so if I go back to 2018-19, we're doing 44 million a year. When COVID came in, all the oil and gas shut down. We were essential workers. Thanks to some of my local reps that got all of our companies as essential. But we went down to less than 15 million for the two COVID years, 20 and 21. We're going gangbusters right now. All those jobs that were shut down are now coming back. We built the MVP in 2018 and 2019, the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Mm-hmm. There's, with the EQT being from Pittsburgh, the three stations that we built were Bradshaw, Harris, and Stallworth. Those were the three MVPs. The fourth one is supposed to be called Lambert, and when these are the Steeler MVPs, which is a great story. We built those 4 years ago, and the left has been fighting us for more than that, for 10 years now. Finally, we're going to get this thing done this fall, if come hell or high water, unless something crazy happens. But Manchin has movement forward. Biden has signed off on it. But we've seen crazier things happen, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's crazy about it is that pipelines are by far the safest way to transport this stuff. So what the left would rather have you driving on roads or trains, which is far more dangerous and it's far worse for the environment to do it that way. So again, if the left cared about the environment, that they would want the pipeline technology. Anybody that's toured some of these pipeline facilities, which I have, I mean, some of these pipelines, like some of these pipelines like have a zero ethane or methane tolerance. Like they've got sensors on every so far in these pipelines that can detect just the smallest bit of methane, and these companies have quick reaction forces to get out there and stop it. And
Yep.
I mean, these places, like, I mean, if people watch Star Trek or Star Wars, they're like a damn space shuttle. They're so advanced. Yet
Right.
the left, like these purple-haired grad students that are out there waving around these climate change signs that don't know a damn thing about oil and natural gas, the technology involved to keep it safe. They've never been out to a site. They don't care about the environment. You know who does care about the environment? The oil and gas workers and the people that are out there working those sites every day, because they live in those communities. Of course they care about the environment, you know? Yet we're at war with these great patriots that make our quality of life better. People like you, Mark, and in your company and your workers, they make this country better. Like you go to the bar at night, you go to a restaurant, like the lights are on in that bar because of the work that you and your people are doing. Yet the left is trying to shut that down. And they're using bullshit talking points and climate propaganda and climate change. And by the way, they've been wrong for the last 50 years. It was global cooling, then global warming, and now it's climate change. And now it's like they've been wrong on every major prediction. So why do we keep? I know that this is a rhetorical question for you because you're at war with these idiots every day. But why do we continue to listen to these people? Like it's mind blowing to me.
The left spent $9 billion last year on fighting oil and gas.
Wow.
Okay?
Did
And
not
fighting,
know that.
Just $9 billion. I'm guessing next year somewhere around 11. They're winning the battle. They really are. But 10 years ago when this industry was really, they wanted to do the severance tax. You remember?
I do. Yes.
Pennsylvania did, and we had about 1,000 white trucks. Let me get my year correct. This is probably 2000. I started the company in '08. This is probably 2010, between 10 and 12. We had about 1,000 trucks through the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Was just starting at that time. And let's meet in Harrisburg, and let's bring our trucks right to the bottom of the hill there, and let's protest. And we did. And we had our hard hats on. We had our FR gear on. I had everybody in my company there. And it was the best showing that we've ever had. But since then, we've lost the momentum. We've lost, I believe that we've lost 100,000 workers, oil and gas workers, not just direct, but companies like mine that do services. We lost 20, we had to downsize 20 people during COVID, and that's slowly coming back up. But we don't have those big rallies anymore. And you see what's in the news. I don't care if it's the Post-Gazette, the Observer Reporter, the Tribune Review. There's never anything good to say about oil.
It's relentless. It's relentless. I'm telling you, I lay this at the feet of BP, Shell, Chevron, these huge companies, these multi-billion-dollar global companies. What are you doing?
Right.
They should be. I just feel like what they do, and I know I've met many other lobbyists on Capitol Hill and in Harrisburg. I know them well. And by and large, I think they're great people, but they are content to just appease. And they think that if they cut a couple $1 million check every year to the right politician, the right PAC, the right organization, that the left will relent and let them stay in business. The end state goal is shutting them all down. No matter how much money that they give them, the left will never be happy with it. So they might as well fight to the bitter end. It's like they're like it's like appeasement. Like they're feeding the alligator, expecting to get eaten last. It's just these companies need to fight back because, look, we talked about it earlier, Mark. 66% of the country right now is at risk of rolling blackouts. I mean, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? It's so crazy to me.
Last week, Shell came out and said we're dropping a lot of this ESG stuff, and we're going to drop our big move to wind and solar, and we're going to concentrate on what we do best. And we're going to see. I think the tides are turning. I'm feeling good that I think as Americans we've had enough of this garbage, right?
I think so too.
Man, I got something I want to bring up. 2 weeks ago, Siemens is the biggest company in Germany. Angela Merkel 10 years ago said we are going to shut down fossil fuels. We're going to do nothing but solar and wind. Well, if you've ever been to Germany, they're like Pittsburgh. You get eight days of sun a year.
Yes.
And depending on how the wind blows, you know. So Siemens just last week came out and with a major announcement that said their wind turbines are defective, and we have to shut a majority of those down. And everything that we have on order right now is not going to be done for years. Okay, this is the biggest private company in Europe that has a major default on these wind things. So we had that last week. What did we hear Monday morning that Lordstown Electrical EVs is shutting down.
Oh, it went out of business. Yeah.
Is in bankruptcy. How many hundreds of millions, if not billions, has put back into that? If everybody remembers, that's where the GM plant was, just north of Youngstown on the Ohio Turnpike. That we would always, back in the day, we would set our tachometer, set to see how long this plant was. It was 1.2 miles long, okay, and just as deep. And who's the majority shareholder of that? Chinese company, okay. So Lordstown is now out.
And by the way, how many taxpayer dollars? How many subsidies did they get on the backs of the American taxpayer? Now they're out of business, and so it's these subsidies that make it difficult for private businesses like yours to compete with them, because it's not a level playing field. So when you hear these politicians out there using these talking points about crony capitalism and subsidies for, you know, renewables, green energy, wind, and solar, this is what they mean. They're taking money out of your paycheck and they're giving it to these green companies that go out of business. But you know who gets rich? All the people who own them. And in this case, it's the Chinese. It's a Chinese parent company.
Yeah. Let's face it, China started investing in rare earth mines 30, 40 years ago, all through South America, all through Africa, all through Asia. You know, we have very few rare earths here. We have a moratorium on rare earths mining that Mr. Biden just put in, I believe, 2-3 months ago. Where's all those rare earths going to be mined? China owns those mines. As you know, child labor, slave labor, and all the rest. And you need all those. We don't have them here to make the panels. We can't make the panels here in America. I think it has to be. China has it locked up, and we're gonna spend trillions and trillions and trillions helping China out.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to me. It's so frustrating to me because they do have market share in many of the rare earth minerals. So this transition to the Green New Deal, as these idiots on the Democrat side of the House and Congress talk about, the transition to a Green New Deal means transitioning to like China being one step further of their global goal of being the world's lone superpower, making everybody dependent on them. And you talk about, you're a guy that started in coal. And I know a lot of folks in Western Pennsylvania and in Pennsylvania, like Cliff Forrest is one of them, is a coal guy. Like you got, why are we even shutting down coal, for example? Now a lot of those plants have like transitioned to natural gas, or maybe they even went out of business, you know. But China is putting in 2 coal-fired plants every week. You know, and here we are. Not only are we shutting down our coal and other power plants and making it difficult for guys like you to do business, in New York City, they're getting rid of coal-fired pizza ovens, for Christ's sake. I mean, are you kidding me? And China's putting in 2 coal-fired power. How does this save on global greenhouse gas at all? Like, we're doing nothing but lowering our own quality of life at the expense of all of our enemies.
The Kyoto Accord and the Paris Accord were exactly the same. It was to make America pay worldwide. Why? And we were smart enough to get the hell out of that, right? So to take that thought process to another level, Ohio and West Virginia have no plans on joining Reggie. They know it's evil, right? You go back 3 months when the East Palestine train, that was some nasty, nasty shit they were carrying, right?
45 minutes from my house, 45 minutes away.
Right on the border of Pennsylvania, right? If Reggie would have been in, Cameron Bartolotta and I were just talking about this a couple weeks ago. If Reggie would have been in Pennsylvania, all the fumes that leaked over from the train wreck into Pennsylvania, we would have had to pay carbon tax in the tune of $850 million to $1 billion. That's how much fumes came off that train. There's no reason they shouldn't have been underground in pipelines, but that's a whole other story that they don't want to hear, right? So why is America's always the cop, militarily, we're going to be the peacemaker and have bases all over, which probably was a smart move, back in the 40s and 50s after WW2 and Korea and all the rest. But why are we always the peacemaker, the policeman? Why do we always have the Kyoto Accords, the Paris Accords? We're going to clean up while China builds 2 Homer cities a week. And your numbers are correct. 2 Homer city size. They have no intention of lowering the amount of coal. And neither does India, neither does Russia, and neither does these third world countries. How are they going to afford EVs or solar panels or these massive turbines? They can't. We always forget that 1/3 of the world is still burning dung in their houses, right? In outside. My brother lives in Thailand. There's no forest left in Thailand. That's all they had to burn. They don't have coal. They don't have natural gas. So 1/3 of the world has no toilets, has no electricity. My friend Alex Epstein, who's on Fox.
Oh, I love. He's a great guy. Very good guy.
Fantastic. His book is on the fossil fuel use is saving the world.
Yeah.
The longevity of people that are now getting natural gas or coal, any fossil fuels that are getting energy, it increases their lifetime approximately 10 years. Right now in today's that's a lot of years. If you're looking at the difference between last year I didn't have any energy and this year I do. Boom, 10-year improvement in your lifetime. Your quality of life, the maternity, everything goes up. This is modern America. What are we, like you said, 66, modern America, modern world, okay? The Jetsons, as we were kids in the 60s, watching this stuff, flying around in little cars. We're there. We're there, and they're going to take our energy off of us, where 66% of Americans aren't going to be able to get it, maybe this summer, maybe this fall, into the wintertime when it gets cold. Think about how cold it has been in the last 3 months. Right, we have these fires. You smell that smell this morning,
yes,
Sean?
Yeah, yes.
It didn't smell like wood burning. To me, it smelled like the old sulfur that you'd smell when the mills were booming in the 70s. And maybe this is a conspiratorial theory of me. What if the left burned all those millions of acres up there to call this global warming? Okay, but meanwhile, Our area hasn't been above 80 degrees in weeks. We're getting all this smoke and this northern air coming down, this cold spell. But, it's climate change now, everything's changing. Well, why is it so damn cold in the middle of June?
I mean, well, by the way, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. Many of these wildfires, you get politicians like Gavin Newsom coming out and be, this is climate change. You come to find out 3 weeks later, it was some kid in the middle of it was arson. Somebody lit a fire on purpose. And so, the left, none of this is beyond the left. I mean, this is what they do. And whether it's with, the Black Lives Matter or Antifa riots, all of 2020, starting these fires and then blaming them on climate change. This is what the left does. And why I think we live at such a dangerous time is that the media, we don't have a real media in this country that actually reports the facts and calls them out. If we did, they wouldn't be able to have freedom of maneuver like this, on the political battlefield, so to speak, in America. And so, I've kept you for like over an hour, and I'm grateful for your time. But let me ask you this, Mark: what do we have to do? Like, what's the next phase of the operation to push back against these crazy people?
So me and a guy named John Gallo and now Brian Lynn and Matt Leeper, the 4 of us so far, and Sonia Gonzalez, she works for EQ2. We have started the American Oil and Gas Alliance. Okay, I think you're familiar with a little bit.
Yes.
From some, we have many alliances. Or similar organizations, an alphabet soup of organizations. I'm a member of all of them, from the Marcellus Shale Coalition, APA, AAD. They're all great organizations, and we all have my little band, my Southern rock band, and I don't know if you can see my home studio here. I was having trouble with my internet at South Point, so my home studio. We played at the Mariana Sportsman's Club. It was a trout fishing tournament. It raised tens of thousands for charity. Those types of things for the American Petroleum Association, which is real heavy right here. But again, a lot of those are more involved in raising money for charity and those types of scholarships and things, which are all great things. But they don't really fight back like we want to fight back. We want to be on Fox News. We want to be on CNN. We want to talk facts and figures. I just wrote down something this morning. The impact fees, Pennsylvania impact fees, Act 13, if you remember your time, this past year set a record. For all of Pennsylvania, the impact fees were $298 million, pushing $300 million. Last year it was $278,000. Washington County, where I sit right now, was the biggest beneficiary at $9.1 million. Susquehanna County was right below that, $8.9. To date, in the last 10 years since it was installed, so totally paid by oil and gas companies, $2.5 billion total. Billion to Pennsylvania. Number one, where's all this money going, right? Where's Washington County, our $9.1 million going? There's a lot of we're losing in the media, but there's a lot of great stories to tell, like I just said there. There's a lot of money involved. We make a lot of money at Steel Nation. We charge a lot more than we would in general construction building a house, because there's a lot of safety involved in those types of things, and all this protocol that we have to follow costs a lot of money. We have a great story to tell. When I was on the Pennsylvania DEP, I would tell that story all the time, but I'm usually preaching to the choir, kind of like you and I are right now, But we need to get out and onto CNN and in front of the left. This hair that I wear there has a couple different meanings. Number one, my wife told me to grow it, and the wife always wins anything. Right? So,
yes, I agree. Good decision there.
And this is a funny thing. 7 years ago, I'm playing at a local roadhouse, and I get off stage, and my wife had a couple glasses of wine. She goes, "You look like a cop up there." I said, "Well, some of my best friends are cops. Clean cut. We work out together in the gym." She goes, "No, if you're gonna play guitar, you got to have some hair." I said, "Okay, I'll grow the hair." But what the hair does as well, it allows me to do a little bit of infiltration into the far left eco-terrorists. Okay, and I've done it twice. And they accept me with open arms. And,
because you got long hair. You look like a hippie or something.
Wear my Grateful Dead shirt, and I fit right in. I try to talk to the far left on this. Unfortunately, they're not you can't talk to them.
It's like a religion to them. That's why I call it the International Church of Climate Change. They're all religious zealots about this stuff. It's crazy.
I take them to oil and gas sites. I show them, the DEP's right over here, in their truck taking notes. The federal EPA's over here taking notes. The Fish and Game Commission, when we're up north, we're and all these different divisions are walking. We're the cleanest energy known to man. Nuclear may be a little bit cleaner, but the three bad publicity since the early late 70s, early 90s, started with 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and then the Fukushima one. We're never going to build another plant. The last one's being built right now in Georgia. It's a small plant. We might see some miniature nuclear plants, but media-wise, nuclear. We'll never build another plant. So what's our alternative? Is our alternative covering up 2/3 of America with solar panels and these ugly windmills that, I don't know if you ever travel on the turnpike, it never seems like the windmills are
They never work. They never work.
And you know what they say? Planned maintenance.
Oh, great. The windmills are going to end up like Pennsylvania roads, for Christ's sake. That's going to be that's terrible.
maybe they work. Well, look what's happened in the ocean now. All the right whales are turning up dead on the beaches of Martha's Vineyard with all these rich people. They hate it. Not in my backyard, right?
Can you imagine buying an oceanfront house for probably $10 million or something like that, and then these government idiots putting a bunch of windmills out there in the ocean? Can you imagine?
I couldn't imagine. No.
I mean, how does that make the environment look better? How is that cleaner? How is drilling or mining for rare earth minerals better for the earth? If people, that's why it keeps coming back to this. But if they cared about that at all, they would totally embrace natural gas. They would totally embrace fracking.
Or my buddy's $20,000 trailer camp, that sits on a beautiful, off of 99 near State College, that he had the nicest view in the history, and now it's just covered with praying mantises that are, maybe spinning, maybe probably not. We're losing the war, but thanks to people like you and a lot of these other associations, the Americans for Prosperity. I was interviewed by them last week. It was fantastic. We need to fight back, and we need to be realist about this. My buddy John Gallo always says we don't need to get off on these political tangents, which we tend to. We know. Let's just fight fire with fire and use facts and figures, and really do. And look at the carbon that we've cleaned up and the methane that we've cleaned up. I can my 8 years or my 6 years on the DEP. We always gave the public speaking format for the first 10 minutes. Anybody could sign up to public speak. Well, it was always the Sierra Club and Earth Justice and environmental justice warriors and all that. And they would point to me because they knew I was the oil and gas guy, and they said, "You're the biggest producer of methane in Pennsylvania." I had a little cheat sheet, and I'd pull out my facts and figures, and I'd say, "Do you know what the biggest polluter of methane is? In the world, they say frackers. Your frackers are evil." No, actually, it's underground fissures in the earth and volcanoes underwater the oceans are the biggest releasers of methane. And you can't compare the amounts of methane that Mother Nature releases, whether it's up in Marcellus, New York, with a bubbling brook, or whether it's Old Faithful that every 13 minutes goes off and people take pictures of their families, out in Yellowstone, and that's methane. Methane naturally releases, through the ground in fissures and cracks and canyons and volcanoes and everywhere else. When you look at man-made, the man-made is really landfills. Number one, that we're starting to pull methane off there, which is good. We're doing a big plant out by the Greater Pittsburgh Airport right now. So it's all these facts and figures. We fight back. The Mother Nature takes care of the first 11. We're not till number 12 when we get into landfills. And let's not even go down about cow farts, I'm still going to eat meat.
Yeah, well, that's all. Eat the bugs, live in a pod. That's what these, as you say, eco-terrorists, that's what they want for us, That's part of the goal. And yeah, Mark, where can people find you? How can people support you? What can people do to get involved to help?
Like I said before, the American Oil and Gas Alliance, spell it out just like you hear it, .org. We just started the website about 2 weeks ago. We're starting to have some fund driving going on right now. Some really good sponsors we're about to announce in the coming after July 4th holiday. That's where mainly find us right there. But all the organizations that are out there are worthy. Support them. Become a member. If you work in the industry, speak up. Speak to your neighbors. Speak to your pastors. The people that you go to church with, that you go to school with, and talk about these things. And let's debate it. We've lost the ability to debate. I make fun of how Parliament works in England and in Canada, but my God, can they debate where we can't? We just point fingers, at AOC and her crowd, and they point it right back to, us hardcore, conservatives. Let's debate these things. Let's look at facts and figures. Let's look at where the greening of America is doing nothing such. We need more energy than we've ever needed. These third world countries, a third of the world doesn't have energy. They're going to need electricity, and it's not going to be the EV electricity. They're going to burn coal for this. Let's do it right. Hey, we do everything right. We're the cleanest burners of coal. We're the best nuclear designers out there. Natural gas by far. They're talking about Russian natural gas. Russia's natural gas has nothing. It's so dirty you wouldn't believe it. And I don't want to get into the science of it. I know we're pushing the clock. We do it the best of anywhere in the world. And let's not let this pipe dream. I shouldn't say pipe dream. We need more pipes, right? We need more pipes in the ground. But this silly pipe dream that we're going to cover the world with these solar panels. In 100 years, we don't know if it's going to be hydrogen. We don't know if it's going to be nuclear. It's certainly not going to be solar. We don't know what's going to be out there in 100 years. And to shut down the economic miracle of the Marcellus and Utica Shale for Pennsylvania's, Ohio's, West Virginia mainly, and to shut down petroleum for this entire country, energy, to go to some far-fetched pipe dream is ridiculous. We need to all fight back on it.
Well said. God, we'll end it there, man. I mean, I completely agree with you. Mark, I think you're awesome. You're a warrior. Mark Caskey, CEO of Steel Nation. $6,000 in your bank account and a spare bedroom to pushing $350 million in sales in 15 years, man. Like you're a leader. You're exactly the kind of person that we like to have on this show, on this podcast. So I'm very, very grateful for your time. Thanks for joining us, and we'd love to have you back at some point.
And I'll see you soon. We got to meet. We met in person when you were running, but it was so fast. So I'll see you soon for lunch.
Yep, you got it. Beers on me.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, see you, Mark.
Take care.
Okay, everybody, that was it. That was Mark Caskey, CEO of Steel Nation. Thank you for listening to Battleground Podcast. As always, never quit, never surrender. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and God bless this exceptional country that we call home. Take care.